All right, welcome y'all to Fountain Lake School Board meeting, June 19th. We'll stand and say the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Keep standing for prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you for this day and your many blessings, Lord. I just ask you to put a hedge of protection around this school. Just be with us school board members, Lord, as we try to make the best decisions we can. I just ask you to guide and protect us, Lord, just in every move we make, Lord. We just thank you for your Son. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right. First order of business is going to be the consent agenda items. If does anyone have anything on those? No? Okay, we'll see those as approved by unanimous consent. And then next item is going to be Dr. Murphy.
Item A there on the financial review, you should be able to see a year-to-date summary. Kind of talk to Tanya, that's pretty much at the conclusion of the fiscal year. You can kind of see of all funds, including the year right at 6.3 million is kind of where we ended up. We do have some transfers to finish everything up, but that gives you kind of a snapshot of where we're at this point in time. Overall, you can kind of see funds flowing in and out. Pretty close to where we thought we would be with Fund 3. You know, we were with the building project that we did over here with all the dirt work, you know, we were thinking that we would probably reduce Fund 3 just below $1 million, and so that's where it's at right now. So, anybody get any questions on the financial summary? I'm going to scroll that down just a little bit and they can see year-to-date too there, Steve. I think there should be pretty close to the same. Identical because it's a year closeout at this point in time. You know, as a component of kind of what I wanted to do here is we enter into a new school year. Wanted to take an opportunity to kind of, with this board, spend a little bit of time with Ray Beardsley and just have a generalized discussion on our current bonding capacity. Kind of just go through we didn't want to do a financial workshop tonight. Several of you have been through that, but I always like to kind of look at current assessments, what a mill's worth within the district. I've asked him to come out and give a presentation here this evening, so he's going to share with us kind of what is available to the district as far as bonding capacity. And you know, take some notes if you got any questions. He always enjoys a tough question anytime he's presenting. So Ray, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And just so you're aware, when we stream our meetings, there's the cameras here, so if you can kind of position yourself over here by Brian, and that way you're not they're not looking right through the back of your head. And put you kind of over to the side.
Not here.
Yes, I'll take care of that and get it to Dana. I think she is
On it?
yeah, she's zoomed in and is watching. And she might have a question. I've asked her to kind of text Mr. Campbell if need be, but thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
This, where she can see.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Okay,
Right
great.
in there anywhere.
Super. Right before tab 1, just for anybody that's new to the board, we're the largest financial advisor to public school districts in Arkansas, and list of the schools we work with are on those 2 pages. Then behind tab 1 starts your annual financial review we do for your district every year. So the first page is your assessment. And for the coming school year, 21-22, it always relates to the year before taxes. So it's the 2020 taxes. We're always behind a year on funding from taxes. We're also a year behind on funding from the state of Arkansas. So that's just the way it works. So for the 21-22 school year, real estate has grown from 338 million to 345. Personal properties jumped from 49 to 54.7, and utilities and carriers is 10.3 and has gone to 10.9. Utilities and carriers, just refresh your memory, that is primary gas and oil transmission lines that run through the district. They assess themselves, they turn in the PSC who doesn't check it, PSC turns it in to the county assessor who has no authority but to accept it. So it's one we really monitor closely. Total assessment grew from 397 million for the 2019 year to the 2020 to 410,795,000. You go right to the left 3 places, that's a value of a meal. So a meal in Fountain Lake is $410,795. Now we use state average when we're figuring what a meal's worth, and that's 95%. So that's 390,255. You'll see in the middle. And just to show you the comparison, this is not in your book. If you want to write it down, you're welcome to. Poland is the lowest assessment in the poorest school district in Arkansas, and they're at $14,682 per meal. Bentonville is $2,492,327 a meal. And Little Rock, the highest in the state, is at $4,044,142. So your assessment value is very good. But just to show you, you can see the wide range of mill values in the state of Arkansas. Anytime you have a question, just don't hesitate to stop me. I'd be glad to try to answer it for you. Millage, you have 7.75 debt mills, which is pledged to your bonded debt, and you have 27.05 M&O mills. By the Supreme Court decision in the Lakeview case, you must have 25, so you have 2.05 mills above the 25. So those are actual rate of collection. It's not 98% on those.
Okay, 7.75 pledged to debt.
7.75 pledged to debt, yes, sir.
So when the assessed valuation increases, that still stays the same.
Yes, sir. I'm going to show you how you'll see the jump up as far as the debt mills, because the debt mills is where you really see it. Now, because you're a unique school and one of probably about 5 in Arkansas that your value is greater than the state average, the state number on the foundation funding, you actually get more money, okay, which is one of the few. And your total millage rate is 34.8, and for your information, statewide, it's 38.85. We're almost at 39, and we're feeling in the next few years, we're going to be to 40 as a statewide average. Doesn't mean, every school will be there, but we'll have 40 or above for the largest numbers. Your rate of collection is slightly above state average. State average is at 95. You're collecting at 96.78, so almost 97%. So you have a very good collection. Of course, a lot of that comes from the great payment from the village, obviously, and that's what makes your number so well. Next is your bonds. You have 2 outstanding bond issues. The QSCB is a special bond. It was part of the Obama era when they had the special QSCB bonds, and those have a net effect of almost 0%. They were 0, and then due to sequestration of the federal government, they have gone up a little bit, but you're getting close to 0. So it shows you 5.11 is your percent, because that's the actual amount that the person that bought the bonds are getting, but the school district gets a check from the federal government when it comes time for interest, and they give you most of that interest money back. So you're close to net 0. That will pay off in 26, 27. We'll never touch that bond because of obviously the effect of being close to 0%. Why would you want to do anything with that? You wouldn't. And so we'll leave that alone, and that'll pay off in 26, 27. There is talk again from Washington, maybe offering that type of bond again. Don't know if it'll ever pass in Congress, but there is talk that they might have something. It probably won't be called that. It would be a new name. Then your main bond is the one we refunded for you in 2020 to get you a lower interest rate. We dropped your rate from 3.29 down to 1.94, and you're receiving in 2021 a large part of it, in 21, 22 the rest of it, and then starting back in 22, 23, we're back more where we were prior to doing the refunding. So the refunding was during that period of time. On the right-hand side, you have a total of $11,835,000 outstanding in principal, and your school year payment is $586,458. But if you'll look at next year, that's more in normal where it was before we did the refunding. We were in the $920 to $950 range, and you'll be at $922,098 in 22-23. So this year you'll still have a lower payment because of the refunding. This bond can be called next year if interest rates are down and we wanted to, or it could be included in an election issue if the board wanted to go to the voters and do that. So we have some options there with that bond. Bond is out through 2037. And then the next question you'd asked earlier is, what are you producing from your debt mills that you can use as revenue? So the first column is the amount of money coming in from your debt mills. So this year we're at almost 3.1 million. You take out your bond payment. Of course, this year it's 586,458. Next year again we'll be back closer to number normal, and that's 922,098. So looking at next year, you're going to have almost a 2.2 million, 2,159,173 that is excess revenue from your debt mills that can be transferred over by law to operation and used to operate the district. And many, many districts do this and have been doing this for years. So it's not anything new. So the school has planned on that money and budgeted for a long time ago. This wasn't something done recently. Did I answer your question that you had?
Yes, sir.
The next page is your foundation funding. State has not certified all the numbers from last year or certified what they're doing this year, but we've got an estimate. I think it's going to be fairly close. First off, we're basing this on 1,315 kids, which means you're down 6, which is great. I have some schools, due to what happened with the coronavirus, that this year their numbers are going to be down much greater than 6 kids. So that's actually good. Line 6 is your assessment, $410,795,000. Your total millage rate is 34.8, and what determines your state wealth index is line 1 and line 6. It's how much you have in assessment to how much you have in ADM. And then if you look at line 8, anybody that is at 0 is considered a rich district. So that means they get little or no state funding. And of course you are at 0. Jessieville's at 0, but they do get some funding because their amount they produce is less than what the state gives. But you're, for example, are not getting any money. You did get a couple years, and we'll look at those here in just a second. So this year it's based on $7,182 per child. If you'll look at line 12, you take your property tax divided by your number of students, means you're producing $7,650.75 per child. So because of that, you're producing a little less than $500 more per child than the state number. So that means not only are you rich, then you do not qualify for state foundation funding aid. And you can see in 18-19, we had a little drop in the assessment, we had a little drop in ADM, and that year you got a little bit. But most years, for many years, you've not. ALE students were showing, that number has not come out, so we used what you had last year, 40 students, $193,725 in funding. ELL numbers won't be out until like November, so we used what you had last year, and that was 27, that's $9,693. Enhanced student achievement used to be the NSLA money. changed the title of it to Enhanced Student Achievement Funding. And that number, again, they will tweak this with your October count, and we're looking at somewhere around 50%, 675 kids at 359,100. Professional development, 47,358. And then again, because you're rich, you do not qualify for bonded debt assistance, so that's why those numbers are 0. And then 29, we're estimating a little bit of decline in enrollment funding. Last 3 years, you've gotten some of the last 2 previous years before this year. So we're looking at almost 62,000, 61,944. And then line 36 is your other wealth index, line 8 is your funding wealth index, and then line 36 is your facility funding wealth index. So if you build an academic facility and the state approves it and then the state funds it, you get about 0.5%. So it's almost, some schools don't even mess with them because of all the red tape. Some take what they can get, so that's up to y'all, of course. You have to apply 2 years in advance. You have to qualify, and they have to fund you. And this year, we had the lowest amount of schools funded from the facility division that we've had in the last 10 years. They've funded like 20 schools. We had a short list, so it was the worst that we've had in funding. Line 37 is what your your local tax brings in. That's anything above the 25 mills. So that's your debt mills plus the 2.05 M&O mills that you have over the 25. So that all comes in there, and that's $3,896,000. And then local revenue on line 38 is the same as line 11 above, and that is your 25 mills and what your value of your 25 mills plus miscellaneous funding. And miscellaneous funding is federal forestry, federal flood funds, and federal mineral funds. Jessieville, for example, gets a lot because of forestry. Mount Ida, Mena, all get a lot. Walter, because of that. Line 40 is the other state funds above. And then line 39 is in most schools, they're big dollar. State foundation funding aid. And most schools are getting several $1 million there. And you notice you're getting nothing and have for the last several years. You got 218,000 in 18-19. Line 41 is the total of your revenue. And so when a board says, how much do I have to pay teacher salaries and operate my district that's not restricted? You take away line 42, your restricted revenue, because you can't count that. You take away your bond payment, because you have to make that or you go into immediate fiscal distress. How much you have is $13,436,443. And that's almost $190,000 increase over the previous year. That's $189,951. That's good news. I do probably about 50 board trainings a year, and I'll have some that will be in the 300,000 or more minus this year in their funding versus the previous year. So that's always good to see up dollar-wise.
So,
Yes, sir.
before we address any questions, there's
Sure.
a point I want to go back to the board
Please do.
today, because I've had a couple of members emphasize the importance of our patrons filling out free and reduced lunch forms. If you go back to what would be line 20, there's a graduated scale there. I underlined $532. So you take that $532 times the 675, which gets you to the amount of 359,000. If that free and reduced lunch rate percentage increases in the threshold of closer to, I think it's close to 70.
You have to have 70% or more
to go to the next level.
Go to the next level.
And that takes you to, then you would get $1,063 per student. So we're quite a ways from that, but for every student that we capture, that is an additional $532 that can go towards instructional materials in that regard. And so it's extremely important whether a person is qualifying, not qualifying, not going to eat. It's kind of misleading because it's, it was that qualifies you for a free lunch. The federal government is providing free lunches to everyone right now, and so what we're seeing across the state and nation is fewer people are filling out the forms. There's still a direct impact to the revenue of the school district by people choosing not to fill those forms out. So I just wanted you to kind of see that's where that kind of comes from, and so you can tell someone that we do get $532 per student that is qualifying for free or reduced lunch. And of course, we're in a scenario right now where all students will continue to eat free.
Thank you, Murphy. The next page is sources and uses, and that's what the state calls it. I call it a balance sheet, and it's your total liabilities versus your total revenue. So your revenue for the 1920 and the 2021, of course, we've just finished, and they've not even finished all the numbers, so we're not using those numbers yet. You had $14,684,965 in revenue, and your total expenditures was $14,357,815. If you take the $14,357,815 and divide it by 12, your average monthly expenditures is right at $1.2 million a month. Doesn't mean every month you write $1.2 million in checks. It's just that's what your average is. We want at least 2 months on hand, and that's $2.4 million. And you know, it's nice if you can have 3 months on hand just to give a rainy day fund, and that puts you at 3.6. But with that said, legislature decided to pass another bill that we are impacted by, and that is 20% balance law. So a school district cannot have more than 20% on hand. That is 2.8 million, to be exact. It's 2,815,17. And I want my schools below that number because that's an absolute number. Now, it hadn't been this year, and we don't know that it'll be next year because they waived that. But if you're $1 above the 20% balance law, they pull that out of your foundation funding. So it's not going to impact you.
So it's $1 for dollar?
Every dollar you're above the balance that you can
Pull it
allow.
out. And since we get 0, we're okay.
So you're probably okay. But we recommend a 2.6 ending balance. And you may be ended there. This number was sometimes before your period 13 report. So they maybe made some adjustments. Instead of the 2.886, it could have been closer to 2.6. So money, dollar-wise, we've got a good balance. So that's good. Next, I threw in a page, after I looked the books together, I thought y'all would find it of interest. I think it's the next one. Is it, that's that one. Your sheet there. But you might like to see how you compare to others in the state. So the highest in the state of Arkansas is Earl, and they're at 54.8 mils. They passed that to, I believe, build a new high school, and they immediately went fiscal stress, which had nothing to do with actually the voters passing this. It was some other issues. Falk, which is one of my schools and has been the highest in the state since 2003 and 4 when we had to meet the Supreme Court decision. They're at 49, and then Cutter, we passed 48.9 to build the new high school there. But look at number 5. Second highest millage in the state, over 2 million a mill, and they're at 48.5. It just takes a lot to operate a school district. North Little Rock at 750,000 a mill, they're at 48.3. And then look at Lebanon, number 1 highest in the state, Little Rock, 46.7. So it just takes a lot, but all the schools are listed and what the millage are. And you'll see all the way through 88 is at 40 mils or more, and then below 88 or less. And I think you're, I'll be highlighting
200.
Y'all are number 200, is that right? So, you know, it doesn't matter where you are, it's what your voters will agree to, of course, but I'm just showing you as far as for your information how you compare village-wise. Next, we talk about revenue and ad valorem taxes, and that is what is a mill worth. And so in Arkansas, 20% of your appraised value becomes your assessed value. So a mill, if you have a $100,000 house, if your value of your assessment becomes $20,000 and a mill becomes $20 per year per mill. Personal property, you get $300,000. We give you an example. $30,000, I mean personal property. So a mill's worth $6,000, so it becomes $6 per mill per year on the next page. We give you an example of a school that's got 38.4. They're at $768 on real estate for that number of mills. And then on the personal property, $300,000, they're at $230.40 per year tax. And then we always like to talk about what's the monthly value when we get into millage. What's it really cost you? So it's $20 per mill per year, and then it's a little over $1 per month per mill, like $1.40, something like that. Your millage is based on, your assessment's based on real estate, personal property, and utilities and carriers. That's what makes it up. Highlights of the Homestead Act, that really, of course, is important, particularly in places like the Village, is once you reach 65, you can lock in the value of your house. Now, if you go to the voters and ask for 2 new mills, they're going to pay 2 new mills, but their house value will not continue to climb. Also, if they qualify under the Disabilities Act, they also can have their assessment frozen. I always recommend they talk to the county assessor, and they can tell them what they need to do to qualify for that.
So go ahead and just repeat that one more time, because that's a very important piece anytime we've had any type of discussion on impact to that age level of individuals. So you're indicating the assessed value would not change, but they would have to pay whatever the increase in the millage rate would be based on the current assessed value. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. So let's say their assessment put their value with their mills at $500 per year as an example, then they get $375 off of that, and they'd have to pay the difference. So they get $375 off their real estate tax bill. And that's real helpful, and they really, of course, we're glad that we're able to offer that. The state does.
Now, they do have to request, isn't that correct?
They do have to request it. Once it's done for
right,
life.
But they do have to request
it. Request it. And there is people that actually qualify in the state that have not asked, and there's millions of dollars sitting in Little Rock because they have not asked for it. Good point. So we want to encourage them. We want them to take, because it doesn't cost the school district a dime when they take advantage of that, because there's a half-cent sales tax that funds it, and the school gets that money. So there's no loss to the school. So we're glad for them to do it. Next item is not in your books. You might want to make a note before we finish the last part. Next year is going to be a unique year because we passed a new bill, legislature. I know that surprises y'all. They passed this year in the legislative session that only allows us to go to the voters 4 times a year at the max. Now, we only go once, but we can go 1 of 4 times a year. So next year, for example, you may go to the voters in the February election, the May election, the August election, or the November election. May would be when the board race is, unless you pick November, and November would be the other board race. So your board race will be May or November, but you could go for a millage change or a bond question. You can go in February, May, August, or November. If you want to go in August or November, there is a conflicting law that the bond attorney is concerned with that we don't think allows you to go in November or even August if your board race is in May. At this time, now the legislature goes in and tweaks it or change. So for you to go now, by November the 14th, you have to turn in to the county clerk and the election commission any change you're making. for the board race. So what schools are doing, and we've done this for the last several years, is go ahead and move your board race in 22 to November. If you do that, then you would have an opportunity to go to the voters in any of the 4 dates. If you don't move it to November, then our feelings with the law are, and I would say the bond attorney, because I'm not an attorney, his feeling is that you're going to go in February or May. That you would run a risk that somebody could challenge it if they went forward at another time. So let's make sure we're clear. You can do a board race in May, or you can do a board race in November in 22. If you choose May, we only feel comfortable you going in February or May to the voters. If you want to go in either August or November, we suggest you move your board race next year. And you may go back in 23
Right.
if you want to, back to May. 23 could even be March, because it depends on whether it's the.
So you can annually declare when you're gonna
Annually declare.
hold your board election, and it will impact the number of opportunities that you would have to run. You get to run 1 election per year.
Correct. In Kirby this year, for example, small school out Highway 70, they want to go to the voters in September because they were going to find out May 1 where they were approved for their project, and they were approved for their project. And so they want to go in September. The only way they could go in September is they had to move their board race to November, which they did this year. We did it last year for this year. And it works well. It's not a problem. And even if you decide not to do something, it wouldn't hurt you to have your board race in November. The only thing that's going to change is the length of the term of that individual. So that you would have a slight term change there. But that's something for y'all to think about. But like I say, it has to be done before November 14th, because that's the cutoff date. We can notify the county that we have changed our board race date.
And in our discussion, it's best served that the board be positioned to vote on that during the October meeting, so that we're not right up against a timeline or anything. So we need to be prepared by October to determine whether we go to May or another race. And then, of course, there's another timeline. If we did want to go for February, we got to go back how many days from that, right?
Now you have to know notify the county in next year 70 days in advance. We still do the budget 60 days in advance, but we have to notify the county 70 days. That's a new part of the law.
Right.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Just a few things to think about as we
Yeah,
get in
nothing
our planning process.
We're doing tonight, we're just trying to make you aware of it, and whatever the board's comfortable in doing, that's fine. Last part of it, I want to show you some options. This is page 14, behind tab 3. So these are just some budgetary information. Not saying that what the board wants to do, it just gives you some options. Number 1 on page 14, on the front cover there, if you were to ask for 5 new debt mills, and it was a 30-year bond out through 2052, that would make your new rate 39.8, and you would have produced $46,400,000 in one-time project money. $46,400,000 in one-time project money. We would not touch the existing bond. This would just be a new bond, but we would extend the mills out 30 years. Okay? So that's option 1. Behind tab 4 on page 18 is option 2. Still 5 new debt mills, but we only ask for a 15-year bond out through 2037. Again, we would not extend the existing mills. I think that's about where the current mills would be. So we're going to actually be at the same length as the current mills. And we're not going to pay off a bond, and that's going to give you $24,180,000 in one-time project money. $24,180,000. Okay.
In that proposal, we would be in a position to either have to go back to the voters in 2035 or run the risk of losing the new 5 debt mills and the current 7.75.
We have to come back no later than that, probably earlier than that.
Yeah, I mean, that would be getting real close to the end of the
Yes.
term. And once
Correct.
those exhaust and full payment is complete, then all debt mills roll off,
That's correct.
including your surplus that you use for operations.
The surplus would not, just the debt is.
But
all the
we
surplus-
have over 2.5 million.
That
that
wouldn't change,
Okay.
just the debt mills. Yes, sir.
Mhm.
The debt mills would fall off. And remember, when we talk about debt mills, we're talking about 2 million in operating revenue.
Right, that's what I was speaking to.
We can't lose
We
the
would
debt
lose.
mills.
That's what you're
Yes.
talking
But
about.
I'm saying that doesn't include the two.
The 2 million, if we lose the
2.05.
7.75 mils, we lose that when that rolls off, so we would lose that $2 million.
Yes, sir.
You and I
Yes,
are
sir.
speaking the
Yes,
same
sir.
You're
language.
saying the same
just-
language two
yeah.
different ways, but it.
Exactly.
It's
Sorry, I
critical
was
that we-
Well, that's quite all right, yeah.
Yeah, but you'll still remain at 2705.
Correct.
Those 7, almost 8 debt mills that fall off will impact you. And we run into that when we pass the millage at Hot Springs, is that some of the community members didn't understand. They said, well, you've got tons of money coming in, because they had more actually coming in than you did. And they said, well, just use that money, it's coming in. Problem is, it's been budgeted by the school district years ago. And every school in Arkansas does it, it's just a different amounts that they have. Last item is behind tab 5. What if the board says, we want to do a project right now, we don't want to wait, and we need to do a small project. For example, every 100,000 you give up in cash flow that you currently are getting from your debt mills, you give up, we can produce you $1,255,000 in one-time project money. This does not require voter approval, this is strictly board approval, state board approval. So that's a second lien bond. We do those many times, but always caution boards and superintendents, make sure you understand we've taken away money that's currently going into operations, and we're pulling it out at whatever amount you need. And that every 100,000 would give you $1,255,000 project money.
Can you go back to option 1 again?
Yes, sir, sure.
That's, in that option, it gives us the latitude to have the greatest, what one would consider to be available money. Can you kind of explain the impact of the current, go back through the current 11.785 million that we currently have in bonds? Will they be rolled into, kind of explain that
Okay.
process to the board
Sure.
again?
We have,
So we have current debt,
you have 11,835,000 in debt, and of course, we won't touch the QSCB, so we're only talking about the 9,955,000 in the regular bond. That we'll leave alone. We will not touch that.
okay?
We're not gonna pay that off and extend it. We looked at it and we didn't pick up enough extra dollars to make it worthwhile.
Okay.
So what we did is let that one alone and just issue a new bond, a new construction bond. So you would have 11,835,000 plus this, option 3 gives you another 48,770,000 in bonds. So you would have about 60 million total in bonds.
The 9 million that we're talking about, that's current leverage to be paid off in 37.
Yes, sir.
Would remain to be paid in full in 37.
Right, or the beauty is by doing it this way, in 10 years, we could go back
Yeah,
and
that's what I
did
thought.
that.
Then we could-
And we could ask to extend out and not any new mills at all and produce project money for you.
So-
we have that option.
In this scenario, what we're creating is one in which that we complete the current construction that's available before us, and then we would have the latitude if the district did really grow beyond the facilities that exist, we could be leveraged to position at that point in time in roughly 12 to 13 years, kind of a no-tax approach
Right.
to new money.
Correct.
Because you've heard districts use a no-tax increase. We're too far away from the current payment of those bonds to be able to leverage that before the community. So, I mean, we kind of studied that. Anyone listening, I just want them to be aware for us to complete any of our projects, it's going to require us to give serious consideration to increasing the millage or paying a higher interest rate using a second lien. Correct? Is it a slightly higher rate or not?
A little bit higher rate, plus, more than anything, we're going to use cash flow.
And we're gonna
This
use-
was not to give our cash flow.
Correct.
We'll have, and the existing cash flow will remain the same.
It would require us to restructure our budget, either pull from operating, hinder our ability to increase teacher salaries, and then we would be paying for a building, and that's really always the very last approach that you would want to take as a Board of Education. Because you don't want to impact the operating funds of the district without first at least asking taxpayers to do it in a way that allows for us to build the buildings based on the mills we're asking for.
Yes, sir. So with all those three options, I know I've thrown a lot at you. Do you have any questions about any of the options or about your funding you currently have?
You don't have anything statewide yet on statewide assessment increases as far as what others may be, what's the percentage of increase? Do we know that yet on a statewide basis? This is a pretty good, it's not a huge increase, but it's definitely a good sizable increase. It's the largest percentage assessment increase I think we've had since I've been here.
It was a nice increase. The state numbers are not out yet.
Okay.
For that, we will have that.
Right.
But they're not out.
And this, of
it's
course,
like
is all
anywhere.
prior to any reappraisals.
Right.
We
And
can
this is,
also make that statement.
and some of these, we've actually had go down, and have others that's gone up. So it's kind of very statewide.
Okay, so you've been seeing it very,
I have some of my areas that are down, and then some others are up. It just varies.
did Dane have any questions?
I think we've kind of heard, most of this. I appreciate that you come all of the time
Sure.
to kind of keep us updated, so each time we learn a little bit more. But it was very thorough, so I appreciate that.
You bet. Well, I appreciate your time and your attention. And just give you some food for thought, something y'all can look at and decide what's the next step you want to take.
All right.
Murphy, anything else you'd like?
No, that covers about all the areas I wanted to cover tonight. That was kind of the objective we were trying to accomplish. Hopefully you found it beneficial, and this booklet here gives you about the most up-to-date numbers as we move forward. If nothing else, you can kind of get a preliminary look into what the budget could hold going into the next year.
Sure. Did you need to stay for any other parts of the meeting?
No, and I will look, I'll kind of follow up with you if I've got any other questions. If these guys have any questions after the meeting, I'll get with you at AAEA next week.
Sounds good. Nice to see you all again.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Diane is good. We did some hands.
You get a thumbs up.
Okay. I'll put your booklet with Robin. You can just stop by and pick it up sometime.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Cindy.
Oh, I know, the nice pens. But what he gave me before, guys.
Oh, you're. There you go. Sorry, Dan. All right, back to you.
No, it's
The
still
next
you.
No, it's still
item.
you.
Oh, Steve.
Okay. Next item, I wanted to, had a few employee questions, just want to spend a moment of time here. We've had COVID-19 update. What I can tell you at this point in time is the guidance from the department and the health department, I think is very much in a discussion. What I can share with you as a board tonight is we intend to open the school year pretty much the way we ended the school year. Masks will be recommended. We think that it will be a good protocol for us to continue to do the deep cleaning, sanitizing. I know a lot of our teachers, whether we spray hands on a per period basis, we're just going to have to get further input. We're going to have to kind of see where this new strain kind of takes us moving forward and see what guidance kind of comes out of that. All of those things are variables. Mr. Campbell's been working with not only Kim, but also monitoring, and we're going to have quarantining at this point in time, to our knowledge, correct?
Right.
and kind of turn it over to you and let you make a few comments as well.
All right, so based on the CDC guidance that we have right now, and that came out on the 9th of July was the date on that. So we're about a week or so past that, and the numbers have continued to increase. But where the guidance was at that point in time, quarantine recommendations are staying the same, except that fully vaccinated students and staff do not have to quarantine as a close contact unless they become symptomatic. As far as quarantine of close contact does not have to quarantine if they're not vaccinated, if they have a mask and the infected person had on a mask. And then when we're looking at contact tracing,
Figure that out.
yeah, if students are masked, then the social distancing decreases to 3 feet. But if they're not masked, then the social distancing remains at 6 feet.
So who's keeping up with that?
Yeah, so our administrators were the contact tracers because they could watch the videos and recognize the kids. And so where Dr. Murphy said we'll go forward with where we were last year, we recommended masks. The CDC recommends vaccinations. I know that folks have their own opinions about all of those things, and we're not mandating any of those things. We're not isolating students based on whether they have been vaccinated or not, whether they wear a mask or not. But the quarantining still takes place in the event that they're a close contact. That's not to say that anyone is being treated any differently other than figuring out whether they were 3 feet or 6 feet apart if they were wearing masks. When Dr. Murphy said we'll roll forward with how we ended last year, one of the things we are not doing is offering the virtual or blended on-campus, off-campus shifting options. So if someone does not want to return to campus, they need to contact us so that we can give them the contact information for virtual offerings, and then they would be homeschool students and virtually attend school that way. Saying that, if we have to quarantine, we will still provide instruction to quarantine students. They would not then be virtual students, but they would still receive instruction just like they would if they were homesick, or if we were having a snow day or whatever. So,
But they may not be homesick, but they may be asked to stay at home based on the quarantine window.
right.
The variable that I would tell you that you heard him indicate is, it's plural, there's many variables now in relationship when we're trying to, and each of you fielded questions, concerns from community members, kids, parents, based on the quarantine component, and the concern we have is sifting through wearing a mask, not wearing a mask, vaccinated or not vaccinated, and having a varied level of length of quarantine. Some people may not like that. And you just need to know that that's currently the guidelines. Those guidelines potentially could change between now and the opening of school. It was our understanding that we were going to receive department guidance potentially. There was an outside chance last Friday. Nothing's been released at this point in time. We do believe that it is being discussed between the department, governor's office, and everyone on before they release the guidance moving forward. And I think they're also watching very closely the number of cases. I think all of those things are having a bearing on the decision-making process, and so they may. I know that Department of Health and Johnny Key, we're going to see them at the conference, next Tuesday? and they're both going to be speaking to educators on a statewide basis, so I anticipate that by that point in time, we should have, if we don't receive something in writing in advance of that, by that point in time. So I think we need to get mentally prepared that we know quarantine's still going to be present. You know, everyone is going to have to make their own decisions as it relates to their comfort levels, but they must understand that the school district is going to do the very best we can to educate students at school and focus on the students who attend school. And so with that, that kind of is where we're at here in the mid-July range. Hopefully, as we learn more, I'll let you know. Is there anything that you guys are hearing out there, or a question for a point of clarity for anyone who's watching?
You cleared it up.
Okay. All right, that's what I had on the COVID-19 updates. From there, turn it over to Hayden. You got anything you want to kind of share with them at this point in time?
Yeah, I'll just say we have a lot of projects still going on campus. Summer school kind of set us back a good 3 weeks, but we're rocking and rolling. And if y'all want to do a walkthrough for the next board meeting, a lot of small projects are getting completed. We're still looking at first week of August for everything to be completed campus-wide, so everything's on schedule. A lot of things been back ordered. We're still dealing with fencing that's been back ordered, concrete blocks, you name it, there's a list. But we're working through it all, and we're gonna have a very good summer and be able to off our projects completed. So we want to do a walkthrough for next board meeting, and Dr. Murphy.
Yeah, you can get a hold of
can,
him. We'll try to coordinate tours. We can do the whole group based on that, or individuals based on the time that you have. I'd love to be able to take you around the campus and kind of highlight some of the things we've been working on before we open the year.
I'll let you know.
Okay. And then our, our meeting schedule, we didn't mention it, but I am going to indicate to the public the meeting schedule, because we're kicking around walkthroughs before school opens, we're moving to a second Monday format. Found that to be fewer conflicts. We'll be coming back together on August 9th, so, if you want to do that anytime prior to that or shortly thereafter before we open school, just let us know. Anything else you want to highlight?
I think we're good.
The only thing I would comment on that you may have seen upon the completion of our work is there has been some utility work in the middle of our new parking lot that should be shored up, cleaned up, recompacted before school starts. We're getting that utility that was in the middle of the parking lot over to the appropriate right of way. I've been working with RDOT on that. If you've had any questions about that or wonder what's going on there. But, that's really, on the facility side, about all we have. Mr. Campbell?
Yes, sir. I shared with you, and so included that in the agenda, these upcoming events. That didn't make it clear.
Other one.
Yeah.
There you go.
Because we do have things beginning to move and shake on campus. Kindergarten Roundup is this week on Thursday, inviting all the incoming kindergartners to come up and meet teachers and go through some activities, kind of give them a little feel for what kindergarten is going to be like. We have our new staff orientation on Wednesday, August 4th. You see the new student registration dates there. Any new student to the district will need to register in their building either on Wednesday or Thursday, August 4th or 5th, 8 to 2 on both those days. Teachers will be back on campus full-time beginning on Monday, August 9th. We'll be here Monday through Thursday that week. Pre-K through 1 open house on the Tuesday, August 10th, and the 2 through 12 open house on Thursday, August 12th. Students return on Monday the 16th, and I noted on there that beginning Wednesday, August 18th, and going every Wednesday the rest of the school year, we will have our early dismissal, We will not be, at this point in time, having the flexible Fridays that we had this past year, so everyone should plan to come to school on Fridays. We're not doing virtual on site, so we're not doing flexible Fridays. Kind of went hand in hand. And then also noted that there is no school on Labor Day, September 6th. So we are just about finished with the hiring process and have almost all of the positions. Well, after tonight's meeting, we'll be down to one position that we're still working to fill. We've had a lot of new folks come in because we moved some folks around was a big part of it. And then some folks chose to do other things, so.
But we feel pretty encouraged about the new hires, conversations we've been having.
Very excited about the new folks coming in. And the new roles for the staff members that we moved around. Excited about all of those things. That's what I have.
All right, move on down to personnel.
Motion to hire the following for the correlating positions for the upcoming 2021-2022 school year. Kenny Shelton, interim middle school principal. Justin MacArthur, head baseball coach. Cindy Godwin, bus driver, 2.5-hour bus route.
Anybody got any questions about that? No? All right, so the motion is to hire the following for the correlating positions for the upcoming 2021-2022 school year. Kenny Shelton, interim middle school principal. Justin MacArthur, head baseball coach. Cindy Godwin, bus driver, 2.5-hour bus route. All in favor say aye. Aye. None opposed, motion carries 4-0.
Dr. Murphy, do you want to comment on Coach Shelton retaining?
Yeah, just as a point of clarity, we have spoke with him and really sat down, kind of discussed what this would look like, visited in depth with Mr. Freeman to kind of talk about his role and what he would continue to do in terms of his oversight with his role in the middle school. We do believe that in this interim role, by utilizing Kim Richards as a lead teacher from an instructional perspective, it's going to be challenging. Coach Shelton's going to begin his day at the field house, and then upon the conclusion of first period, come down to the building. We believe that from roughly 9 until 2 on a daily basis, he will be available there in the building and kind of work through anything that needs to be handled at that point in time administratively. Be working directly as a liaison with Mr. Campbell in this role because he doesn't have prior experience. He does hold a certificate, and he will serve as the LEA for the building as the principal. And so with the action taken this evening, we'll notify the state. He'll have that role for the entire year. The other thing I told him that would probably work best, and he will visit with his coaching staff, but he has already been processing during the 7th grade period, which is in the middle of the day. He's going to ask one of his other coaches to be a part of that. We'll still have 3 coaches in the 7th grade period, but instead of him going back to the field house and back, especially kind of right there around that lunchtime frame, for us to have the appropriate levels of supervision, he will remain down on the campus, so he'll be there through both lunch shifts. There's going to be a time or two, maybe depending upon a road game, where he may be departing early because of the length of that road trip. But I think that'll be probably less than a couple of days in the fall of the year. The other thing that we have to be mindful of is his schedule. We feel like that we can restructure and backfill the elements within his schedule without additional personnel. So it did not negatively affect several student schedules based on him versus other individuals that we might have been considering internally. And the final comment I would make with where we're at here in July, it negates us having to worry about an external candidate that would be in a statutory obligation for another contract. This alleviates all of those issues. allows for us to employ someone that the community knows, and hopefully as parents and community members, that they'll feel comfortable in reaching out to him if they have questions that they cannot resolve at the lower level. So feel like it's a solid plan. He's excited, looking forward to the challenge. It gives him a chance to really, gives him an opportunity to experience administration without having to make a full-blown commitment. And so this kind of lets him find out if this is something that he wants to pursue
He gets to
long
test the
term.
waters first.
Right.
See if he wants it.
And then, of course, the other thing I'd comment finally is an interim role. He'll fulfill that role for the current school year, and then we will begin to work with our leadership team and the community at large. We have a middle school position open for the following school year that will be entertaining a vacancy to fill that position, and I'm sure our timeline would be to try to do that no later than February. At the latest would be March, but we don't want to employ too early, but we don't want to be trying to hire, at this point in time in a late April, May window when we could have that kind of secured and have our candidates. I've asked our principals if they know someone that they speak highly of, we want them to come visit our campus this fall and see what we do. And hopefully we'll have a very solid applicant pool we can recruit from to, hire the right one in the lands following year. Any questions? That kind of summary we were looking for? All right.
Well, that's it. So meeting adjourned.
All right.